The NBA Finals are moving from Boston to Dallas with the Celtics up 2-0 in the series. I want to take a few minutes to talk through some of my thoughts on how the series has played out so far. Before this series started, I predicted that Boston would win primarily because they have the better team talent despite the Mavs boasting the best player in the series, Luka Doncic. In listing the tiers of starters in this series, I said that Luka was at the top alone, but then Boston had 5 of the top 7, with a little gap between that and the final 3 starters on the Mavs. Through the first 2 games, though, the depth has actually favored Boston to an even more extreme degree, where they've had 5 of the top 6 and arguably 6 of the top 8 or 9, depending on how you would rank Horford and PJ Washington. I also pointed out that while the top 2 players from each team were averaging pretty similar points per game combined through the playoffs, that I thought it would favor Dallas in this series and even bump them up to an even 60 per game, just hypothetically, and pose the question, can the rest of the Celtics outscore the rest of the Mavs by at least 9? I suggested they could, and, well, the duos have each dropped from their average, but Luka and Kyrie have only averaged 6.5 more per game. Meanwhile, the rest of the Celtics have averaged 67.5 points per game, while the rest of the Mavs have averaged 48.5. That's a plus 19 margin for Boston. If I had to vote for the finals MVP through 2 games, neither of which counts for anything, I would give it to Luka. I don't agree with the concept that the winning team has to have the MVP. Luka has clearly been the best player on the court. He's averaging 31 points, 10.5 rebounds, 6 assists, and 3 steals, while shooting 51% from the field and 38% from 3. Sure, you can knock him for slumping from the free throw line, where he's only 46% somehow, his 6 turnovers per game, and being picked on at the defensive end of the court. But if you watch the games, you see that he is almost single-handedly keeping the Mavs competitive against the much more balanced Celtics team. If I had to select a Celtic right now, then my vote would go to Drew Holiday. So what do I expect going forward? Well, I don't expect Dallas being home to cure all their ails. Boston has been better on the road than at home all year and is actually undefeated on the road in these playoffs. The biggest question for the Mavs is, can Kyrie get going? Now, maybe you can make the case that being in Boston did get in Kyrie's head a little because we know the history there, but I don't think that was his problem. I think the problem was largely the Celtics' defense, which is coming with them to Dallas. Does that mean I don't think Kyrie can go off in one or both of these home games for 30 plus? No, of course not. He has that ability, but it won't be easy for him. That I know for sure. The real issue for Dallas is that Luka has run out of gas in each of the first 2 games. He's only averaging 3 points per game in the fourth quarter, and he shot 2 of 10 from the field. Between having to do almost everything on offense and Boston wisely involving him on defense throughout the game, his legs can't sustain it. They need Kyrie and the other guys to carry more of a burden throughout the first 3 quarters so that Luka can actually be the finisher that they need him to be in these games. Porzingis has been listed as questionable for Game 3. I would guess he plays, but maybe he's more limited than he was in Games 1 and 2. In any case, as much as he helps Boston, I don't think they need him to win this series. I think if he were out the rest of the series, Boston could still win it, and his playing in 2 games would have done 2 things. One, he can know that he contributed to a championship. That's important for these players. They need to know that they did something to earn the championship that they're going to win. His play in Game 1 was huge. And the second thing is everyone was reminded of what he brings to the Celtics and therefore helps people realize how impressive this run has been for Boston considering how much he has missed, when all the attention during their run has been about who hasn't played against them rather than who hasn't been playing for them. I have to finish up by saying that I am pretty tired of all the discourse around Jason Tatum from both the national media and Boston fans. I don't care where Tatum ranks among the league's best players. Personally, I wouldn't put him in the top tier. And I don't care if he is Boston's best player or not. I think the beauty of this team is that they don't have a clear hierarchy, and that any one of their 5 best players can be their best player on a given night. Sure, Tatum probably checks that box on more nights than anyone else, but it is far from surprising if any of the other players are the best in a particular matchup or a particular series. If I had to give a player of the game for the Celtics for each of their games, game one, I would give it to Porzingis. Game two, I would give it to Holiday. I think it would be incredible if they just kept taking turns with who had the best game. I would love to have the Derek White game in the next game, and maybe this is less likely, but if Al had a real throwback game to help finally earn that title that's eluded him, that'd be incredible. And the best part about the Celtics is that this is entirely realistic, where they could win a series without their two most talented players being the best in any single game. That said, if I had to predict who was going to be the player of the series for the Celtics by the end, I would pick Jaylen Brown. I think he's been the second best player for Boston in each of the first two games, and I think he'll continue to be vital for them. His importance goes up in this matchup because of how he matches up with Luka. He is the best defensive option on Luka because he has the size, strength, and quickness. And then on the offensive end, he's the best at attacking Luka because of his quick burst. Tatum, on the other end, gets pushed around a little bit easier by Luka. He's got a little higher center of gravity, and he doesn't blow by Luka as easily because he doesn't have that quick first step. And Luka defends size better than he does speed. In the end, I picked Boston to win in six, but if I were allowed to update my prediction, I would predict Boston in five. I think Luka gets the Mavs one in Dallas, and then the Celtics get to close it out on their home floor with their fans.